Hi, today we're with Dwight Killian, Executive Director of Music's the Serving the Word Ministries, and Reverend Richard Parrish. Hi, guys.
Hi, Chuck.
Hey, Chuck.
I'd like to talk to you today about how do you find church musicians, and what is it that you look for in church musicians? Richard, you being a pastor, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah. Finding a church musician, the first thing is, if I have to evaluate their skill level, I would just have them interview with Dwight.
Yeah.
Because I don't know the first thing about music. Yeah. But I do understand the heart of worship. And to find a player that is sensitive, a player who can listen, a player who is adaptable, pliable, those are very important things to me, because I believe all of that is very related to the heart of worship. And so, as a pastor, wanting a congregation to engage in worship, to respond to a God who reveals Himself to us, finding the musician who has that flexibility and that passion, that heart, is very important to me.
Yeah. Dwight, I want to ask you about resources. For example, if a pastor is looking for a really good keyboard player to play in their band at the church, where do they find them?
You know, I think we've kind of gone through these resources before. Richard and I were part of a church plant, and a lot of times I think the pastors are first going to go to the seminaries or the schools, the colleges that are Christian colleges and things like that. Probably, even depending on the denomination, they might even be looking more from a school that was focused on the organ or something else. But if their team isn't set in that and they want to do something different, I mean, a resource that I feel, Chuck, never got used a lot. You were director of jazz studies at ASU for 22 years. The jazz musicians are right there in your program. And right away, when I became part of the worship team on Richard's worship service, then I'm immediately looking for a jazz keyboard player, because the way to utilize the things and the concepts that we're trying to bring in the music and the improvisation, you know and I know that it's mainly in the harmony instrument. And so if you can get someone who has some flexibility in that, like on the keyboard or the guitar, then you can introduce these ideas of improvisation in the service.
That's great.
You know, so I think your local colleges and things. I mean, one of the things that I think is what I learned on the opposite end of being part of the worship team is you find tons of people in your own congregation who have a tremendous heart for God, that want to give their talents, and maybe haven't played in years, and they don't have the experience that the professionals have. And so then you have to really make those hard choices, and they become hard choices of what's more important, the heart or the level of the musician. And there's even certain instruments that almost becomes more important on. You know, to where sometimes because of the role of that instrument, you might be able to take a person who isn't as strong a player. You know, even for me, in fact, I would have to say that if you had a weaker bass player, but you had a strong piano player that could help carry the ball of the music, then that works. And so sometimes these people with these great hearts, you have to find other areas of ministry that they can do, or other ensembles they can do within the
I'm
team.
frequently asked at workshops, well, what about using amateur musicians versus professional? Of course, my preference is always going to be for the professional because of the practical nature of it. You know, making things happen in a very quick, precise, bam, bam way, you know, and actually we can make it very cost effective. That's something that pastors need to know. It can be very cost effective using professional musicians.
Saves a lot of time.
But, that's right. But in the event that you do open the doors to bringing in people who are not professionals, then it's, I would think that the music minister, the leader, the worship leader there has a responsibility as teacher. Exactly. If you're going to take that person under your wing, then you have the responsibility to teach them. And that may take some time, you know.
And actually, too, to use the resources. We're talking about using resources. So if that person has a heart for God and they really want to give that, then they maybe need to take the initiative to take some private lessons from someone at the college that's close by.
Right.
A lot of the major cities have music instrumental instruction that can help that person become a better player, because their worship is going to be stronger if they're not thinking about how they have to play their instrument.
As a pastor, I think you need both. And part of the reason is because one of the roles of the church is to help mentor and equip.
Exactly.
And so we drew a number of musicians from ASU into our worship team over the years. And in addition, we had some people in our church that they were adequate musicians, but not great musicians. But they had wonderful hearts, and we were able to connect them with other professional musicians for a training, mentoring role.
Nice.
So I think it works well.
Great. Okay, so to summarize then, we know the resources are there because schools, there are so many music schools that have really good programs, you know, and there's a number of young musicians that are looking for opportunities to work, number one, and also it's a chance for them to experience worship maybe in a completely different way, and of course, as you were mentioning, what you're looking for is the heart of the whole experience of worship, you know, and to take it out of the gig or entertainment mindset, that thing, and put it into the proper perspective to where it belongs.
Yeah.
So good.
Chuck, one other thing that I think is really important is that when we do think about using a professional musician, we don't realize how easy that can be, or actually how important that can become a ministry of its own. Living here, I've been in Phoenix now for 10 years. When I first came here, every jazz musician I knew had a church gig on Sundays and stuff, and they were ministering. I mean, when I spent my first summer in Phoenix and all the work dried up, then a lot of these musicians were surviving by the church gigs that they have. And you know, and it's ministering to those musicians. It's not just a gig. God's word is going to live through that and speak to that musician, and it becomes more than a gig. So there's just this cycle of helping create this thing that works for the professional musician. The other thing is that a lot of times they might have an improvising musician on their team and not even know it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because a musician who's going in as a gig, he's going to show up and play exactly what he's supposed to play, and might not even inform anybody on the team that, hey, I improvise a little bit, or I could do this. Because that's what's surprising to me, exciting for our ministry and using jazz and improvisation in the worship, is that there's already so many worship teams out there who have an improvising musician who's not being utilized. That if they spend some time with them, they can use it.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks
for the wonderful information.